Ray is 67 years old, and he looks at exactly one number. It's on his retirement statement, $720,000. He thinks it's fine, not great, average maybe. What he does not know, what nobody has ever told him, is that on paper, Ray is quietly sitting in the top 10% of American households. Here's the part that should bother you. Being in that top 10% did not make Ray feel safe. It did not change his monthly math by a single dollar. Last month, he and his wife Diane sat at their kitchen table, looked at a calendar, and quietly agreed to cancel a trip they had been planning for 2 years. 2 top 10% retirees, deciding they couldn't justify the airfare. So here is what I want to show you. How a couple can cross a wealth line that 90% of this country never reaches, never feel it for a single day, and still feel squeezed every month. Because the number Ray keeps staring at was never the real scoreboard. And the scoreboard he should have been reading does not even appear on his statement. Let's start with the lie hiding inside one ordinary word: average. When Ray calls himself average, he's doing what almost everyone does. He's comparing his $720,000 to a headline. And headlines love one number. The average retirement savings in America is somewhere around $330,000. By that math, Ray has more than double the average. He should feel ahead. He doesn't. And the reason he doesn't is that the word average is quietly broken. That $330,000 figure is a mean. You add everyone's savings together and divide by the number of people. The trouble is that a small number of enormous accounts drag that number upward, like one billionaire walking into a room and making everyone's average net worth $1 million. The number most people actually live near isn't the mean. It's the median, the household, sitting dead center. And the median retirement savings in this country is not $300,000. It's around $87,000. Sit with that gap. Mean, $330,000. Median, $87,000. The same data, 2 numbers nearly 4 times apart. That gap is not a rounding error. That gap is the entire game. And almost every time you feel behind, you are being measured against the version of the ruler that got bent by people who live nothing like you. But here's where Ray's story gets strange, because his retirement accounts are only one piece of it, and the bigger piece never shows up on the statement he reads. Ray and Diane bought their house in 1995. They paid $185,000 for it. They've lived in it for 30 years, raised 2 kids in it. The mortgage was burned off years ago, and that house is now worth about $850,000. Ray does not think of that as money. To him, it's not a number, it's the house, the kitchen table, the driveway he shovels in January. And it doesn't help that every house on his street looks roughly the same, owned by people who also feel ordinary. When everyone around you is sitting on the same quiet pile of appreciated equity, nobody feels rich. You just feel like a person who lives on a normal street. But the cold arithmetic of net worth doesn't care how the street feels. To that arithmetic, the paid-off house is $850,000, sitting on Ray's balance sheet, invisible to him, doing nothing for his monthly cash flow, and quietly shoving him across a line he doesn't know exists. Add it up: $720,000 in retirement accounts, $850,000 in home equity, about $60,000 in cash, 2 paid-off cars. Ray's net worth is just over $1.5 million. And depending on which study you read, the line that separates the top 10% of American households by net worth sits somewhere between $1.5 and $1.9 million. The most cited primary source, the Federal Reserve's household data, puts that threshold at just over $1.5 million. Ray is over the line. By the numbers, he is a top 10% household, and he feels completely, unremarkably ordinary. Now, before you decide this is a feel-good video about how you're secretly richer than you think, stop. Because that is exactly the trap I want you to avoid. This is not the part where I tell you to relax. This is the part where I tell you the relief is hiding a bill. Here's the question that should be scratching at the back of your mind. If Ray is in the top 10%, why did he cancel the trip? Hold on to that question, because the answer is the whole point. The reason Ray crossed into the top 10% has almost nothing to do with the thing that decides whether he can actually afford his own life. He won a game he wasn't even playing, and he's losing a different game he doesn't know he's in. There are 3 different scoreboards in Ray's life. He's been reading the wrong one for 30 years. By the end of this, you'll know which one you've been reading to and which one actually decides whether you make it. Let me show you the first scoreboard and why it's been lying to almost everyone who ever felt behind. Scoreboard number 1 is the national scoreboard. It's the one Ray has been reading his whole life, and it's the one almost every finance headline is built on. And the strange thing about it is that it can tell you 2 completely opposite stories about the exact same person, on the same day without changing a single dollar in their account. It told Ray for 30 years that he was behind. It could just as easily have told him he was winning. Both readings come from the same scoreboard. The only thing that changed is a hidden setting almost nobody adjusts. That setting has a boring name. It's called the denominator. And it is, quietly, one of the most powerful numbers in your financial life because it decides who you are being compared to. Change the denominator, and you can move yourself from near the top to somewhere in the middle without earning, saving, or losing a single cent. I'm not going to hand you a tidy percentage for that shift because the honest answer is that it depends on which pool and which age you pick. But watch how far Ray slides using nothing but real Federal Reserve numbers. Start with the first denominator. All American households. Everybody. Every age, every situation, lumped together into one giant pool. This is the pool the Federal Reserve uses for its big household numbers, and it is the most flattering mirror Ray will ever look into. Why? Because that pool includes a staggering number of people with almost nothing set aside. Here is the number that reorganizes the whole picture. In the most recent Federal Reserve data, only about 54% of American households had any retirement account at all. Read that again. Nearly half of households, close to 46%, did not have a single dollar in a 401k, an IRA, any of it. Now, I want to be careful here, because honesty is the entire reason this channel exists. No retirement account does not always mean no plan. Some of those households, especially older ones, are leaning on an old-fashioned pension, a defined benefit plan that pays them monthly without ever showing up as an account balance. So it's not 46% of the country staring into the void. But it is a huge slice of the country whose retirement account balance, the thing Ray compares himself to, is exactly zero. Drop Ray into that pool. His $720,000 in retirement accounts isn't compared to other savers. It's compared to everyone, including the tens of millions sitting at zero. Against that crowd, the median, the middle household, has about $87,000 saved. Ray has more than 8 times the middle. And here, I have to catch myself because I just quietly switched rulers on you. And switching rulers without telling you is the exact trick this whole video is about. A minute ago, I said Ray had double the average. Now I'm saying he has 8 times the median. Both are true, and that's the point. The average is around $330,000. The median is around $87,000. And depending on which one a headline grabs, the same $720,000 looks either pretty good or miles ahead. If I can move Ray that far just by picking a word, imagine what a headline does to you on purpose. In the all households pool, Ray isn't average. He's near the top. So why has he spent 3 decades feeling behind? Because nobody compares themselves to the household with nothing. That's the quiet cruelty of it. Ray never pictured the 46%. He pictured the guy at church with the lake house. He pictured the headlines about millionaires. He pictured the couple 2 neighborhoods over with the new truck every 3 years. Ray built his private scoreboard out of the most visible, most comfortable, most upgraded people he could see, and then wondered why he always came up short. He wasn't measuring himself against America. He was measuring himself against America's highlight reel. That's the first denominator trick, and it runs in one direction. It makes responsible people feel poor. Now watch the scoreboard flip. Change the denominator to the second pool. People Ray's own age. Just the 65 to 74 crowd. Suddenly the comparison gets harder because you've thrown out all the 20-somethings with student loans and nothing saved. Everyone left has had a full career to accumulate. Among that age group, the median retirement balance climbs to around $200,000. Ray's 720 is still comfortably above the middle of his peers, but the distance shrinks. He went from near the top of everybody to above the middle of his own generation. Same money, different denominator, lower ranking. And there's a third pool, the one the brokerages love to show you. Just the savers. Just the people who already have a 401k and actively feed it. I don't have a clean percentile for Ray in that crowd, so I won't fake one. But the logic is simple, and it cuts the other way. Strip the chart down to people who all saved, and $700,000 stops being remarkable because you've deleted everyone who makes Ray look good. Same money. Harshest room. He might walk out of that one feeling behind all over again. So here is the uncomfortable truth about scoreboard number 1. The same man, Ray, 67, $720,000, didn't move a dollar, is simultaneously near the top of all households, above the middle of his age group, and merely okay among dedicated savers. All 3 are true. All 3 come from real data. And which one you happen to read decides whether you feel like a success or a failure when you close your laptop tonight. This is the part that the headlines never tell you, because a headline only has room for one number. It picks the denominator that makes the best story, and you absorb the verdict without ever knowing a choice was made on your behalf. Now let's put the house back in, because this is where Ray actually crosses the famous line. Everything I just walked through was retirement accounts only. But the top 10% threshold you hear thrown around, that line somewhere between $1.5 and nearly $2 million, that's net worth. Everything you own minus everything you owe. And the single biggest thing Ray owns is the house he doesn't think of as money. So stack it. $720,000 in accounts, $850,000 in home equity, $60,000 in cash, just over $1.5 million in net worth. And the most cited primary source, the Federal Reserve's Household Survey, puts the top 10% line at just over $1.5 million. Ray clears it, not because he was a brilliant saver, not because his 401k is enormous. It isn't. It's above his peers' middle, and that's all. He clears the line because he bought an ordinary house in an ordinary year and simply did not sell it for 30 years while the price quietly tripled. Let that land, because it's the actual mechanism behind the title. The thing that pushed Ray into the top 10% was not discipline. It was not a clever portfolio. It was time, plus a paid-off house, plus a denominator full of people who never got either. The wealth that ranks him is mostly the wealth he can least easily spend. And that is the hinge this entire video turns on. Here's a quiet sentence I want you to sit with. None of this looks like wealth when you're living inside it. It looks like a house, a statement, and a slightly nervous feeling on the first of the month. Because notice what scoreboard number 1 still has not answered. Not one of those 3 denominators, not all households, not his age group, not the savers, told Ray the one thing he actually needs to know. None of them told him whether he can afford to be retired. They ranked him. They did not fund him. A percentile is a position in a crowd. It is not a paycheck. Ray spent 30 years trying to win a ranking. And the ranking, it turns out, was never the thing that decides whether he and Diane can keep the lights on, cover the next medical bill, and still fly out to see the grandkids. That's scoreboard number 2. It's the one that quietly canceled their trip. And it has almost nothing to do with how Ray compares to anyone else, and everything to do with a number he has never once calculated. Let me show you the scoreboard that actually pays the bills. Scoreboard number 2 doesn't rank Ray against anyone. There's no percentile on it, no headline, nobody 2 neighborhoods over. It only asks one question, and it asks it on the first of every month. How much does it cost to be Ray for 30 more days? That's it. That's the entire scoreboard. And it is the one that quietly canceled the trip. Let's actually run it, because this is where the relief turns into a bill. Ray and Diane spend about $72,000 a year. Not extravagantly, and to be clear, Ray's a composite, so treat his figures as a realistic illustration, not survey data. Even with a paid-off house, his year runs about $72,000. Property taxes that have roughly tripled since they bought the place. Homeowners insurance that reprices upward every single year. The Medicare premiums, the supplement, the dental work. Medicare politely declines to cover. Groceries that cost what they now cost. And a line item Ray would never put in a spreadsheet, but pays every month anyway, helping their daughter, who is 34, underwater on a car and quietly behind on rent. So where does that come from? Some of it, a big piece for most retirees, is Social Security. And here, I'm going to do something the headlines won't. I'm not going to invent Ray's exact check, because yours is what matters, and yours depends on your earnings history and the age you claimed. So let's treat Social Security as the dial it actually is. Whatever it covers, the rest has to come out of the $720,000 in accounts. Now, lay the guideline next to it. There's a rough rule of thumb, the 4% guideline, that suggests how much you might pull from a portfolio each year without a high risk of running dry over a long retirement. 4% of $720,000 is about $28,800 a year. Hold that number because it's the ceiling on what the accounts can comfortably hand him. Here's the test that decides everything, and you can run it on yourself tonight. Take what your life costs. Subtract your Social Security. Whatever's left is what your portfolio has to produce. Every year, no exceptions. For Ray, his spending minus his benefits leaves a draw that bumps right up against that 28.8 ceiling. And in the years the roof leaks or a tooth goes wrong, straight past it. That's the whole diagnosis. Not does Ray have enough, he has a fortune on paper. The question is whether the spendable engine, the accounts, can throw off the gap between his costs and his benefits year after year without the tank running down faster than planned. And one honest flag, because this channel doesn't get to mock other people's rulers and then lean on a flimsy one. The 4% guideline is itself a simplification. It mostly ignores the order in which your returns show up. A bad first few years hits a retiree far harder than the same years hit someone still working. That's a video of its own. For now, just hold 4% as a sane starting estimate, not a guarantee, and notice it still isn't comfortably clearing Ray's gap. That is why a top 10% household cancels a trip. Not because the wealth isn't there. It's there. $850,000 of it is parked in the walls around him. It's there because the part of his wealth that ranks him so highly is the exact part he can't spend without selling the roof over his head or borrowing against it. The scoreboard that made him top 10% measured everything he owns. The scoreboard that runs his life measures only what he can safely turn into a monthly check. And those are not the same number. They were never the same number. Now, I need to stop and do the most important thing in this entire video. Because without it, I'm just another channel scaring retirees. I am not telling you that being in the top 10% is bad or fake or a trap. That would be stupid and it would be false. Ray is genuinely, measurably better off than the household at zero. His paid-off house is real safety. It means his single largest expense, shelter, is locked and can't be jacked up by a landlord. That's enormous. If you're watching this from behind, please do not walk away thinking the people ahead of you are secretly drowning. Most of them aren't. Ray isn't drowning. Ray is fine. Ray is just not as free as his percentile implied, and he spent years either feeling poor when he was ahead or assuming the ranking meant he could exhale, and it didn't quite. That's the honest version. Top 10% is not danger. It's just not the same thing as funded. A high ranking and a fully funded retirement are two different claims, and the whole financial conversation in this country quietly treats them as one. So why couldn't Ray see any of this? He's not lazy. He's not financially illiterate. He paid off a house, raised 2 kids, and stacked $700,000. What kept the second scoreboard invisible to a careful man for 30 years? Here's the force, and it isn't a villain. It's the way the entire system is built to talk to you. Every tool Ray ever touched measures the wrong scoreboard. His retirement statement shows a balance, a ranking number, not a sustainable monthly income. His banking app shows net worth, which proudly includes the house he can't eat. The headlines show averages and percentiles, because rankings make better stories than burn rates. Even the friendly retirement calculator asks, "How much have you saved?" a scoreboard 1 question, far more loudly than it asks, "What does your life actually cost? And for how long?" None of those tools are lying. That's the part people get wrong when they reach for conspiracy. The brokerage isn't plotting against Ray, it shows him a balance, because a balance is easy to display and easy to feel good about. The system doesn't need to deceive Ray. It just needs to keep answering the easy question, what do you have, and quietly never force the hard one, what can you reliably spend for the rest of 2 lives? After taxes, after inflation, after the daughter, after the year the roof goes. Ray was never hidden from the truth. He was just never required to do the harder arithmetic, and nothing in his life ever handed him the bill in advance. And there's a second force, softer and more human. The house. The very thing that made him wealthy on paper is the thing that hides the problem. Because home equity feels like security while behaving like a locked drawer. Every year it climbs, Ray feels a little safer and gets a little more illiquid at the same time. The number that ranks him keeps rising. The money he can actually touch does not. Security and access drift apart, silently, for 30 years, and nobody sends a notification when the gap opens. So now, look at what we've actually got. Scoreboard 1 ranked Ray near the top and told him nothing about whether he can pay for his life. Scoreboard 2 runs his life and told him nothing about how he ranks. He's been reading the first and living the second, and they've been disagreeing with each other this whole time. The trip didn't get canceled because Ray is poor. It got canceled because his wealth and his cash flow live in 2 different rooms, and he only ever checked one of them. Here's the good news, and it's real. The gap between those 2 scoreboards is fixable, and it's fixable without selling the house, without panic, and without pretending Ray is in trouble he isn't in. But it requires a third scoreboard, one that almost nobody builds, because no app builds it for you. It's the one that finally connects what you own to what you can spend, across the one variable both of the other scoreboards completely ignore. That variable is time, not your age. How long the money has to last, and what happens to it in the years you can't see coming. Let me build you the third scoreboard. It's the only one that ever actually answers the question Ray was really asking. The third scoreboard is the only one that ever answers the question Ray was actually asking, and it's the only one no app will build for you. Call it the funded scoreboard. It ignores how you rank against anyone, and it ignores how much you own on paper. It connects exactly two things: what your life costs and how long the money has to cover it, including the years you can't see coming. Building it is not complicated. It's just nobody's job to hand it to you. So here's how Ray builds his. 3 moves. Move 1. Separate what you own from what you can spend. Ray writes down his net worth, the whole $1.5 million, in one column, and then he draws a hard line and puts the house on the other side of it. Not because the house is worthless, because the house does not pay the electric bill unless he sells it or borrows against it. On the spendable side goes the $720,000 in accounts and the $60,000 in cash. That's his real engine. The moment Ray sees those two columns apart, the mystery dissolves. Top 10% in the left column. A normal, slightly tight retirement in the right one. Both true. He was reading the left column and living off the right. Move 2. Run the one subtraction the calculators bury. Take your annual cost of living. Subtract your guaranteed income, Social Security, a pension if you have one. Anything that arrives, whether the market is up or down. Whatever is left is the number your portfolio actually has to produce every year for the rest of your life. That remainder is the only retirement number that matters, and almost nobody can say theirs out loud. Ray couldn't for 30 years. The day he can, he stops guessing and starts steering. Move 3. Pressure test it against the years you'd rather not picture. The roof, the first serious health event. The stretch where you're helping the daughter and the market is down at the same time. A funded scoreboard isn't one that survives a perfect decade. It's one that survives a bad one. If the remainder from move 2 only works when nothing goes wrong, it isn't a plan. It's a hope with a spreadsheet attached. That's the whole framework. Own versus spend. Cost minus guaranteed income. Then stress it against a bad year, not a perfect one. 3 moves, and not one of them requires you to be richer. They require you to look at a different scoreboard than the one glowing on your statement. Now, 2 honest cautions, because steering the wrong way is its own danger. This is not me telling you home equity is useless or that you should rush to sell or borrow against your house. For a lot of retirees, the paid-off house is the best part of the whole plan. It locks down your largest expense, and it's there if the late years get expensive. The point is not to spend the house. The point is to stop counting it as money you can spend, so it stops fooling you about the engine that actually runs your month. And this is not a recommendation to do anything specific with your accounts. Your taxes, your health, your spouse, your guaranteed income, your state, all of it changes the answer. This is the educational version. The personal version is a conversation with someone who can see your whole picture. What this video can do is hand you the right scoreboard. What you put on it is yours. So here's what I'd actually ask you to do today, before the feeling fades. Open your statement, not the app's cheerful net worth banner, the actual statement, and find the spendable number, just the accounts. Then, on the back of an envelope, write what your life costs in a year, and subtract what arrives guaranteed. That remainder is your real retirement scoreboard. You may find, like Ray, that you've been quietly ahead of almost everyone and still need to tighten 1 or 2 things. Both can be true. They usually are. If this is the first time anyone has explained the difference between ranking high and being funded, that's exactly what this channel is for. Fewer headlines, better questions. Subscribe, and I'll keep taking the numbers everyone repeats and showing you the one underneath that actually decides things. And do me one favor that helps more than a like. In the comments, tell me which scoreboard you've been reading without realizing it. The national one that made you feel behind, the age group one, or the funded one you've never actually built. I read these, and they decide which scoreboard I break down next. Let's go back to Ray and Diane at the kitchen table, the trip canceled on the calendar in front of them. Here's what nobody had ever told them. They didn't cancel that trip after running the numbers and finding it impossible. They canceled it without running any numbers at all, because the only scoreboard they'd ever been handed was a balance that never told them what they were allowed to spend, and a percentile they didn't even know they had. Maybe a careful version of that trip fit. Maybe it didn't, and the honest answer needed the bad year math we just did. But that's the point. They never got to find out. They made a 30-year decision in the dark, steering by a number that was never built to steer. That's the quiet cost of reading the wrong scoreboard for 30 years. Not poverty, something stranger. A top 10% couple talking themselves out of a life, not because the math said no, but because they never let the math speak at all. So look at your own statement tonight and ask which scoreboard you've been living by. Because the number that ranks you and the number that frees you are almost never the same number, and only one of them ever sent you a notification. The other one has been waiting quietly for you to go build it.